inviting me along tonight to speak. There is always a challenge to speak on such occasions when you're the third or the fourth speaker, especially after such thorough speakers, where everything has been said that needs to be said, but not quite everybody has said it yet. Just as Mr. Mazumdar had spoken a lot about what the Indian government is doing, the High Commissioner has spoken a lot about what the British government is doing, and actually there's a bit of reassuring alignment on our shared priorities. So if you hear some of the same things again, you will forgive me, but I just take that as good coordination on our part. The state of the relationship between UK and India is genuinely in a good place. You've already heard the numbers on investment. To repeat those numbers, because they're great numbers, it's not very often you get a chance to repeat those things, but to maybe even cut them a different way. The UK last year invested more in India than America and Japan combined. India invests more in the UK than India invests in the whole of the rest of Europe combined. It means that when India succeeds, the UK succeeds, and it means that when the UK succeeds, India succeeds. And that lays an amazing foundation for a good and genuine relationship across the piece. I think trade is an area where we can do more. And actually, if I was going to start on our priorities and the UK government's priorities for where we want to do better, trade is absolutely at the top of that list. But before I talk a bit too much about the commercial side, and I know that was the sort of the request today, the topic is the UK government's India strategy. And one of the things I wanted to emphasise is that the UK government's India strategy is extremely broad. And that trade and investment is actually only just one part of it. It's the part of it that I talk most about as Director General for Trade and Investment. But as Deputy High Commissioner, it's a huge field. And I gave a speech the other day in Mumbai, and the topic was the UK-India relationship, brackets, it's not just about trade and investment, exclamation mark. And I spoke for 45 minutes without talking about anything to do with trade and investment. I don't have 45 minutes now, and I don't intend to speak for that long, and I'm sure you'll be all grateful for that. But to pull out just a couple of the areas in which we're working on. One obvious area is education, and it's well known that there's a huge number of Indian students in the UK. At any given time, there's somewhere between 20 to 30,000 Indian students studying in the UK. What you might not know is that we have a really concerted programme to encourage UK students to study in India. Because any good relationship needs to be two ways. We have a programme called Generation UK, and we are trying to get 25,000 UK students to study in India over the next 5 years. It's a really important programme for us. We launched it last year. We did the first trial run of recruitment of just 500 places that we put on the board just to get our processes right, get our sponsors aligned, make sure that everything was lined up. And those 500 places were 5 times oversubscribed. We didn't even try and advertise it too much. We only needed 500 places to fill. So I'm extremely optimistic about that. The arts and culture. In Mumbai alone, in the last year, we have had the British Museum, the Tate Modern, we have had the London Symphony Orchestra, the Scottish Symphony Orchestra, and over the course of the coming year, a year and a half, we will have a huge programme of Shakespeare-related activities. We hope to bring the Royal Shakespeare Company, we hope to bring the Globe across to India on travel plans, and we want to make sure that our engagement with India is as broad as possible, and the events in India will not just be about Shakespeare, they will be about in the time of Shakespeare. So India's art and India's culture in that period and in that time as well is a big part of our ambitions there. One of the areas that I would love to talk most about is one of the areas I can probably speak least about for obvious reasons, which is defence and national security. It is an area where our two countries cooperate a great deal. We're very close. And it is an area where we share information that has genuinely saved lives in both countries. And it's also an area where we continue to do joint military exercises. And it shows that not only do we have a strong commercial relationship, a strong arts and cultural relationship, but we are quite literally prepared to fight alongside each other and to live and to die with each other and to protect the common values that we so clearly share with each other. The High Commissioner correctly pointed out, a couple of months ago we had a new government here in the UK, we had our elections, and there has been nothing but an increase in interest and activity around India. We have ministers with not just a professional interest in India, but a huge personal interest in India. Baroness Verma, who is here, Minister Preeti Patel, whom you all probably know very well, but Minister Joe Johnson, who's just been appointed as the minister, was the FT correspondent in India. Ron Prabodhan has huge personal ties, and one of the first things he did was send me an email from his office saying, so what's going on and what are you doing and how do I get involved? Oliver Letwin is constantly on a plane. He is driving, and I will come on to a number of the areas before, he's driving them personally. And I met him yesterday, he said, look, Kumar, when I come to India, I'm happy just to come for 4 or 6 hours, do the important meetings that you want me to do, and fly back out again. And then I'll come back again in 2 weeks' time as well, if you need me to do that. Francis Maud, you would hope and expect, but has already engaged heavily on the India agenda. And the Chancellor and the Prime Minister both personally care about this area extremely. We do not, as the UK, have joint bilateral economic and financial dialogues with many countries. It takes a lot of time, it's a lot of overhead, it's a lot of work to get those right. And India is one of the countries with whom we have that engagement and that dialogue. If I was going to talk about the agenda going forward and what our areas of priority were, starting with trade as our overall main objective, or the area that I think we need to improve on the most in the commercial space, there are sort of 4 areas that I would like to pull out as areas of focus for us. The first is improving the ease of doing business and also communicating back to the UK about what the realities of the ease of doing business are in India, because sometimes realities and perceptions don't align. And in this area, we're working very closely, not only with the Government of India and with a number of the state governments, but with the UK India Business Council as our partners on the ground. And what we're doing there is quite a large programme of engagement, heavily supported by the Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, and Mr. Amitabh Kant, is to try and get as much, not just information sharing, but we've identified the budget to get us a Condi from the Better Regulation Development Authority in the UK to come and work with state governments and with national governments to actually not just do a training course, a one-off course in India, but then also to actually embed and develop and deliver projects and improvements on the ground. There's been a lot of interest, especially at a state level, on the UK's 1 in, 2 out programme. It creates a self-cleansing system. It means that every time an official or a bureaucrat sat somewhere wants to introduce a new piece of legislation, they need to go out and find 2 bits to get rid of. It means that the statute books no longer keep increasing forever. I think the UK government is now thinking of introducing 1 in, 3 out to speed up the process. But philosophically, it gets your officials in a very different space. How do you measure the 1? How do you measure the 2? Is something that we have worked on. Again, is an area where we are looking to share our experiences and our processes in that area. I'm sure John will say that the UK government's not doing enough, and there's still far too much red tape. We're still trying to cut it, that's why. We're also here, we've also made sure we've identified the budget to get key Indian officials from India to come and train and work shadow and work in the UK, if that's part of what they want to do as part of their career development. And again, with a heavy focus on ease of doing business. So for us, this is a real priority area. Working with the UK India Business Council, who are helping identify needs on the ground of Indian and of UK businesses, what it feels like to trade and to export into each other's markets. The second area, which is a real priority for us, is actually financial services. The India-UK Financial Services Partnership, which the High Commissioner mentioned, is extremely important for us. And that is because if India is to grow the way that we all in this room want it to grow, and we all think it will grow, it's going to need a lot of capital. And that's going to be capital that will not just be generated domestically, but will have to come from international sources. And it is our hope and our ambition to bring the whole of the world's capital to bear and to invest in India. We don't want us to be the only, the biggest G20 makers in India. That's wonderful, it's great. We want to act as a catalyst so that the whole of the world's capital is born to bear appropriately in India. We've shown huge success working with China, for example, on internationalization of the renminbi. The biggest offshore trading venue for the renminbi in the world is London. It adds great liquidity to Chinese assets, it makes it easier for them to raise capital, increases the convertibility of the currency, reduces the business risk. And that's the sort of journey that we would like to work with the Indian government on. It's just one of the areas in this particular space. The third area here for us is infrastructure. And the High Commissioner mentioned the Bangalore-Mumbai Economic Corridor. I would add to that, smart cities. And I'd highlight again, it's not just a mix of expertise that we wish to bring to this. And smart cities is not just about infrastructure, it's also about IT, it's about health, it's about good design, it's about healthy living, it's about the entire environment that we want to support. The Chancellor, before the election, announced an extra £1 billion of UK funding for export credit guarantees to be used in this space. I'll just, a brief aside on that £1 billion, which we are now working on, and actually I'm interested in feedback for all of you on whether you would be supportive of this, is we not only want to use those export guarantees to fund British work in India and support some of our efforts there, but we're also very interested in seeing if we can use that money to support Indian and UK joint work in third countries. So, for example, we're working currently with an Indian building and infrastructure company on how they could do the construction work in Burma on a project, how UK companies can provide the design, and how the UK government will provide the loan guarantee for the entire project. So our aspirations for our partnership are starting to move beyond just India as a geography, but how we can work together to work in third countries as well. And I think that's an important part of how we want to engage going forward. The last bit I wanted to mention is actually SME engagement. And the big companies, quite rightly, get a lot of airtime and they get a lot of the attention. But 70% of the employment in the UK comes from small, very, very small companies. If you want to make a dent in any growth, in any real trade numbers, it has to be the small and medium-sized enterprises that really, really support us here. And for us, not only is that something that the UK government is supporting, but again, very important for us are our partners on the ground, the UK-India Business Council. Doing business in India for a small company can be daunting. And I think unnecessarily so. Whilst it's challenging, I think it can be made easier. And with the UK-India Business Council, over the course, again, of the last 12 months, we have gone from having no business centres in India to having 3, in Gurgaon, in Mumbai, and in Bangalore. And as a UK business, you can get off the plane and you can go and rent a desk by the week. You can have a telephone that you can get within 24 hours. You can get internet access. And you have an advisor who sits over there who can guide you through the process. The UK IBC has an ability to put people on payrolls for you. And have a sort of contractual relationship with them, because it's quite hard sometimes to get people on payroll. It's hard to get your accounting right. It's hard to navigate the legal system when you first arrive. So the support that we're trying to do, and most importantly as the UK government, we're not trying to do it all ourselves. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said the scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." We're not trying to do it all ourselves, and in this case our partners, the UK IBC, are helping to provide that service to companies. Really practical support where it's needed to try and help drive those numbers. Ultimately, as the UK government, we're not going to change the economics of a proposition. We're not going to fundamentally make something profitable when it's not. And we're not going to do the groundwork. But what we can do is, wherever possible, make it that little bit easier. And that is very much our focus, that is very much our aspiration. And that is hopefully what we will do and what we will achieve. I will pause there. Thank you very much.